I, I think, do you think everybody's here? Okay. I'll go ahead and start. My name's Matt Kuhn. I'm from Steno Trader. I buy and sell machines, and I provide a lot of machines to school. So I came out because there were a lot of questions about different ways to use your machine, different problems that come up, and how to make adjustments, and then other tips and things about the machines. So I'm going to take the time to go through everything. I'm going to talk about different adjustments that you can make. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them at the time that we're talking about them. I'm going to probably get to almost everything. So if you start to ask a question about something that I'm going to cover at some other point, I may just say we're going to get to that. So just make sure that any questions that you have, either write them down and then ask them later, or if you want to come up and ask me about your machine specifically, I'll be happy to answer any questions about those as well. Most of the machines that are used for the school are the Steno machines, whether it's a 200, 400 SRT, Protege, or even the Fusion. They all have the same mechanism. So mechanically, they're all exactly the same. The adjustments are the same, the way the machines write are the same, and that goes through the whole line of machines. Electronically, they're different. So there are going to be certain differences between making adjustments on a Protege versus a 400 SRT, but I will cover those and give you the opportunity to make any of those adjustments on your machines that you have. So just be patient and we'll go through it. With the machines, everybody I assume knows how to open the machines. There are different adjustments that you can make in the machine. You can adjust for the tension, which is how hard it is or how easy it is to make a stroke. You can make an adjustment for the depth of the stroke, which is just that, how deep your stroke is. Some people like a deep stroke because they have a real heavy hand. Other people like a real light stroke because they don't want to make any deeper stroke than they have to. So first, for the tension on the machine, and this is on all the Steno machines, with the and that includes the manual machine too, the 200 and the 200 SRT. There's a white wheel here on the right side of the machine. Okay, clockwise, if you rotate that clockwise, it's going to make the tension harder. Counterclockwise is going to make it lighter. If you have a real heavy stroke, some people call them pounders. If you have a real heavy stroke, you may want a stiffer stroke. If you've got a real light stroke, then obviously the lighter is going to be more for you. For the depth of stroke, let me just go ahead and show what I'm talking about. So this right here is the wheel for the tension on the machine. Can you see that? Okay, it's right in here. Okay. So I'll come back here. And it's this white wheel right here. I don't know if everybody can see it or not. And it rotates, it goes round in a circle. But there is a point that it will not go any further. Okay. And then you would have to go the other direction. Okay. And for the people online, it's this wheel right here. Now for the depth of stroke. On the opposite side, inside the machine, and you actually have to look over, you stand over top of the machine and look into it, there's a red wheel right here. Okay? Okay, now that rotates and it will go around in a circle as many times as you want. But you can see how the keyboard will go up and down when you make that. And it's a very fine adjustments. Okay? And it's all the way inside right here. That's for the depth of stroke. So it's right over. Oh, I'm probably blocking it. And so it's a longer stroke. It's a longer stroke. Okay, so if you look at the keyboard, you'll see it going up and down. So that's the extreme. That's as short as it'll be, and that's as high as it'll be. And so, but you really have to look inside the machine in order to find that. Okay. And again, this is, you see the keyboard moving up and down, other than me going like this. So, in there. Okay. Okay. And then again. Okay. All right. So, next is the ribbon cartridge. Okay. Sometimes this is a big topic of conversation. Other times it's not that big of a conversation. Inside the machine again, you'll see a blue wheel. And again, I'll walk around. But there's a blue wheel. It only moves in one direction, and that's towards you. So if you're looking inside, you're going to pull it with your index finger towards you. What that does is it advances the ribbon. Well, why do you want to advance the ribbon? Well, first of all, when you install your ink cartridge, you want to make sure that it's seated properly. And so you're going to just put it in there, tap it in place, and then advance the wheel, and you will physically see the ribbon moving. Okay? However, when you are making a stroke, this is only going to advance the ribbon about a 1/16 of an inch, which is about the width of a key or a character. Okay? So when you're writing and you're trying to see whether your ribbon's moving, unless you're just writing real fast and you're paying attention to the ribbon, you're most likely not going to really see it move that much. So this is the, okay. When your ribbon starts to write light, you can reach in there and pull it, and it'll get a little bit more ink on it. It's probably not going to necessarily re-ink the ribbon for you. However, there is a way to make your ribbon last a little bit longer. When you take the ribbon cartridge out and you look at the bottom of the cartridge, you'll see a little gear. And in the middle of that gear, you'll see a slot. You can take a little screwdriver. It doesn't have to be a jeweler's screwdriver. You can take a screwdriver and you can rotate it. When you rotate it counterclockwise, that is the direction that it moves in the machine. Okay? You want to try to rotate this ribbon completely about 3 rotations in order to hopefully get the ink toward the outer edge of the spool. Inside the cartridge, there's a spool. It's like a sponge, and it's filled with ink. The outer edge of the sponge is what comes into contact with the ribbon. Okay? So as you're writing, it's using the ink on the outside, but because it's not advancing that quickly, it's not like the ink's necessarily being drawn out. So if you take the screwdriver and rotate it counterclockwise, it'll help bring that ink out a little bit. If you have an electric screwdriver and you put that screwdriver, the flathead screwdriver in there, and run it in reverse, which is counterclockwise, it will help to extract the ink from the center outward. If you have one, you only need to run it about 15 seconds, and you'll see the ink start to come onto the ribbon more. Okay? Another question that I'm asked is that when I get a ribbon and it's new, it's got so much ink on it, I can't read my notes. Well, you really don't want to handle and touch this ribbon itself because it's a mess. So what you can do is with the ribbon in the machine, take a piece of note paper, fold it in half again, place it in between the ribbon and the platen. What it's going to do is it's going to, as you pull the ribbon advance knob, it's going to move the ribbon across the paper, and it's going to help absorb some of that excess ink that's on the ribbon. It's not going to wipe it clean or wipe it dry, but it's going to help a little bit in getting that excess ink off of the ribbon. You see I've got this in between here, okay? The reason why I double it up and double it up again, because it gives a little bit of extra thickness to the paper, and it's forced up against the ribbon at that point. Yes, sir? Yes, it is. Because the platen is a rubberized product. Ink is, what it'll do is it'll impregnate itself into the platen, and it will transfer that ink into the platen where that it'll end up drying out. And then if it's in there too long, the platen will end up becoming raised, and then you'll have problems with your stroke and with stacking, which we'll get to later on. But anyways, if the machine is going to be setting idle for more than a day or so, take the ribbon cartridge out. It's that simple. Okay, it'll help preserve your machine. One of the questions that was asked at the end, when everybody was trying to leave, had to do with how to clean the machine. The only thing you do to clean this machine is to clean the platen. Somebody said, what do I use? Can I use an alcohol swab? The answer is no. Alcohol swab is very wet. It drips down into the machine. Underneath the platen, there's a bunch of grease, which is used to lubricate the keys and all the inner workings. That alcohol will degrade that and you'll have problems with other things in the machine. What you do is take isopropyl alcohol and a clean white cloth, preferably a paper towel. Nothing with ink, because the alcohol will take the dye out of the paper cloth. And just simply wipe it over top of the platen. Okay, you want it to be damp. You don't want it to be wet. You can maybe damp to feel it, but not where you can squeeze it and you can see it running out. And just clean this. That's the only thing that you should need to do to clean the machine. If your machine is properly maintained, that's all you'll need to do. I don't recommend oiling it or greasing it. And if it's serviced properly, a service should last about 2 years. Okay? So that's just a good rule of thumb. And that is for professionally as well. And whether it's a paperless machine or a paper machine, they all need to be maintained at about that same rate. Let's just see. Sure. The ribbon, when it gets light. It's just that simple. Everybody goes through it differently. If you use that method with the electric screwdriver and you're able to get the ink back out to the outer edge of the spool, after you do that the second time, that's when you need to go and get another ribbon cartridge, because it won't be that much longer before you start to run out of ink and you won't be able to re-ink the cartridge. And you're really not re-inking it, it's just you're extracting the ink out of the... Yes, sir?
Do you recommend removing the ink cartridge if you're not going to use it for a day or two? Do you have any tips for storage? Can I just leave it on the table somewhere?
No, just take a Ziploc bag, put it in the Ziploc bag so nothing gets on it. The other reason why you don't want to leave it in the machine is because if there's any excess oil near the platen and it gets onto the ribbon, your ribbon will be ruined. Okay? So, yes, ma'am. Rubbing alcohol. Yeah.
Oh, but you said that to use alcohol.
No, because alcohol swabs usually are soaking wet.
So rubbing alcohol.
Right. Right.
Is Is it okay to remove the ribbon and not have paper in there? You know, if we're writing into our software, is it okay?
It's not recommended, and the reason why is because it will damage the platen. Yeah. Right. So, and you need your paper notes anyway for your school. So, yeah. Platen. Okay. Any other questions at this point? Okay. Some people think that this little green plate that's here with all the little screws in them will help make your print darker. That's not the case. The only thing that the contact assembly is for is so that when you're writing real time, it transfers your notes to your real-time software. Okay? It's not that you shouldn't make any adjustments, because you may need to make adjustments. But when you make these adjustments, you have to make very small increments. Okay? Now, why would you do this? If you have stacking, there's two types of stacking. There's electronic stacking and there's paper stacking. Electronic stacking has to do with when you're writing real time. A lot of times if you make a stroke and you look on your software and there's two A's and you know you only made one stroke, that's stacking. Okay, what happened is when the contact went in there, it hit the contact twice, once when it went in most likely and once when it came out. So what you're going to do is you're going to open up the lid, and again, this is the same with any Stentora model, okay? And you're going to go to the corresponding letter that you're having the problems with, and you're going to, on your screen, you know, make the stroke, verify that that you're still having that problem, okay? Then you're going to, and you're always going to start when you make an adjustment with making a counterclockwise turn. The screws that are in this switch plate, when you make the turn, they travel very quickly. So if you go counterclockwise, it's going to come out. If you go clockwise, it's going to go in. Okay? If you ever have to make more than a half of a turn, you've got a different problem. Okay? The amount that you should make, the amount of adjustments that you should make is only an eighth of a turn every time. So just a little turn like that. Yes, if you have to make more than a half of a turn. But you're going to only make eighth inch or eighth turn increments. Always start coming out, especially with stacking. You make a stroke and the letter doesn't appear on your software, well, you've got a problem with that contact. Okay? You can turn that contact screw so far that you actually will break the contact that's inside here. It costs $325 to $350 to replace this. So just make sure that when you're making your adjustments, you're taking it just a little bit at a time. So when you make the adjustment, if the eighth of a turn isn't enough, go another eighth until you see the result that you need, that you're looking for. If your letters are missing, or if the stacking still appears, then you actually may want to go clockwise. It's a trial and error. There's no hard and fast rule with this. So the bottom line is just be very careful. Also realize that all of these letters also associate with the numbers. When you make a stroke for your numbers, it does not necessarily mean that because the letter was adjusted properly, that the number is going to come out properly as well. So if you're in there and you're making like if you're making an adjustment to the S or the T, and you want to check to make sure that your number 1 or number 2 is coming out right, just make sure that you check both of them. So do you have any other questions about making adjustments?
How would you adjust the numbers?
Well, you'll hold down the number bar and hit the S at the same time. But you would adjust the S for the number 1. This is number 1, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So if I'm going to make an adjustment,
So let's say I adjust this to S, right, and it's 9, but then my 1 is adjusted, and then I adjust
you
to
just
1.
you still have to just tweak it until. Not usually, not necessarily. It usually will not affect the S, but you have to check both of them. So, and again, if you have a problem with one and not with the other, and you can't fix it, you've got another problem. So.
Is this a sensitivity thing? Is that what it does? Is it increases and decreases the sensitivity of each one of the keys as well, or?
Well, no. What it does is the contact that is in underneath that plate, they sit like this, and when the key comes into contact with it, when you make the stroke, it comes into contact with it. So when you deepen that set screw, it pushes that contact down so that it will come into contact with the key.
Well, let me ask you, like, for instance, some of the letters that we write are 2 keys at the same time, and quite frequently, one of the letters will be lighter because it's not as strong.
Well, when you say lighter on the paper,
yes.
Okay,
Or
I'm sorry,
not just on the paper, but also, on the screen it will come out as a misstroke because it didn't recognize that you had also hit.
Then you, right.
So,
then what you do is you go to that specific character and you make that adjustment for that specific character. And then you go to that combination to see whether or not you've solved, it should solve it. But all of the contacts and all the characters that you make adjustments for on the contacts, they all act the same. So if you have a problem when you have a combination and and it's not coming out, but when you go to check that specific key, it's coming out, then it's probably, you just need to practice on that combination. So I'm not a teacher, so don't ask me why or anything, what to do about that. So, okay. Okay, next thing is electric mode versus manual mode. With all of the 400 SRTs, the Proteges, and then all the professional Stentura models, they have the option of writing either in manual mode or electric mode. Okay, the way that you know what that setting is that there's a red arm on the right side of the machine. This red arm, if the red arm is standing straight up and down, it's in electric mode. If it's laying flat or horizontal, it's in manual mode. So it's right here. Okay? It's right over here. I'll tell you. I'll talk about that. Okay. So, what's the difference? Okay, electric mode means that when you make a stroke, the platen is automatically going to advance to whatever the spacing is that you've set. It's right over here. Laying down like this is manual mode. Standing up is electric mode. Okay? Just because you're writing in manual mode does not mean that you cannot write real time. Okay? It just means that when you make a stroke in manual mode, that stroke is what advances the paper. It's what drives the paper through the machine. So, if you're writing in manual mode and you make a half a stroke, the spacing is going to be different than if you make a full stroke. And that's electric mode, and that's manual mode. All right. So if you're in electric mode, every stroke that you make should have the same line spacing. All right. Some people also think that in electric mode that they're able to write faster. which is usually the case. All right. And the way that you make the spacing adjustments on the 400 SRT is with the machine turned off. How many have 400 SRTs? Okay. I'm going to take my time, and I'm going to go to all the different areas and make sure that you understand this. It's in your manual, so some of you may have done this and some of you may have not. All right. With the machine turned off, you're going to hold down the initial S key. You're going to turn on the machine. You're going to get your lights blinking back and forth. Then you're going to repeatedly stroke the HR. Okay? What's HR stand for? Less. So that now your spacing is going to get less. If you want to go so that you want more, you're going to go pH. And you're going to repeatedly make those strokes. You'll see the spacing get wider. All right, so I'm going to come over here, then I'll tell you what else you do. So when you start, you're going to hold down the initial S. You're going to turn on the machine. If you want your spacing to be less, you're going to repeatedly stroke the HR. And real quickly, you'll see the spacing shrink. If you want it to be more, you repeatedly stroke the pH. And quickly like this. And you'll see it start to increase. Okay? Would you like to see this, or do you got it? Yeah? Okay. Okay. All right, so now, just because you've done that doesn't mean that you're finished. After you get to the spacing that you want, you're going to hold down, you're going to stroke KWR. That's going to set it in place. After you stroke KWR, turn the machine off, turn the machine back on, and you're ready to write at that spacing increments. All right? So now with the Protege, it's different, obviously. With the Protege, you have 6 buttons. What you're going to do with the Protege is you're going to hold down the 3rd and the 6th button at the same time. When you hold, after you do that, you'll see a bar come up. Your machine's off. Okay. All right. Okay. So that's okay. So when you turn the machine back on, or actually when you make that stroke, or not that stroke, I'm sorry. When you press those 2 buttons, you'll see a meter come up. All right? That meter is on the Protege. Okay? That meter tells you where your spacing is. Okay? Now, if you hit the hit the 3rd button, that makes it less, and you'll see that little meter go down. If you want the spacing to be greater, you hit the number 4 button, and it'll go and make your spacing wider. Now, after you've done that, you let it set for about 5 seconds, and then it's set in place. All right. Now, while we're on the Protege, to clear the memory, you press the 3rd and the 4th button once. The RAM button will start to blink on and off, and then you press it again, and that clears the memory. You hear the beep, beep, beep? Okay. On the 400 SRT and the 200 SRT, all of the machines, the 400 SRT, 200 SRT, and Protege, they all store 50 pages of notes. So, when it fills up, you need to clear it. You'll get lights that will start blinking on the 400 SRT and the 200 SRT. To clear it, turn the machine off. Hold down the initial S, T, and K. Turn the machine on. Release the STK, and then stroke KWR. The lights will stop flashing. Turn the machine off. Turn the machine back on. Memory's cleared. So, any questions about that?
on the statement of the protege and the clearing the memory of the protege.
Okay.
Can you tell me what the first button is on the statement is? Which button is it?
The third and the sixth button. No, while it's on. Right.
And then
The third and the fourth button. You hit the third and the fourth button one time, you'll see the RAM flash, and then you hit it again, and it'll clear the memory. And you'll see that little indicator bar will be filled up all the way. As you start to write with the protege, eventually you'll see that meter going down, going down. When it gets down, somebody asked me how often you should do it. Until you learn how to transfer your notes, you can clear it off as however often you want. So same way with your 400 SRT. So the last thing I'll talk about is batteries. Okay, Stenograph has a way of identifying when the batteries were made. On every battery, you take it out of your machine, you'll see a little stamp. It'll have a 4-digit number. The first 2 digits are the week that it was made. The last 2 digits are the year that it was made. They're good for about, a battery is probably good for about 2 to 3 years, depending on how much you're using it. Best practices for using it depends on how, you want to pass this back? Or? Oh, thank you. The best way to figure out how to use your machine, how to use or save your battery, actually depends on whether or not you're able to always plug in your machine. If you're able to always plug in your machine, okay, you don't need to have the battery in there. Okay, so if you're always at school and you're always able to plug in, you don't have to have the battery plugged in or into the machine. Does everybody know how to remove the battery? No, you do not. Well, if you're plugged into an outlet. So, if you're able to do that, then on the weekend when you're home studying, plug the battery in and let it stay in for about 3 to 4 hours. That should charge it up completely. And then you'll have it available for the week in case you're in class and you can't plug in, or you need to plug in for whatever reason, or need to use the battery for whatever reason. So that the batteries are good for about 300 charges. Every time your machine is plugged in, your battery's charging. It's not just so simple that you plug in your machine and that's considered one charge, but it will degrade the life of the battery. And this is true with the Diamante as well. So just depending on how you can use it, how you're able to use it, your machine determines on how you should use your battery. Yes, sir. You need this if you're using your batteries every day. In other words, if you were going out to a job or if you come to school every day and you couldn't plug in, it's recommended that you cycle charge your battery once a month. Okay? If you are not using your battery every day, okay, do not cycle charge your battery once a month. You should not need to do that. Yes, sir. On the Stentoras, okay, this does not necessarily hold true with the Wave because that's a lithium-ion battery. The Proteges, I think this probably holds true with that as well. But what it does is it completely discharges the battery and then recharges the battery. You don't have an option on a student machine to cycle charge the battery. All right. Typically on a student machine, you really don't need to cycle charge the battery if you don't need to. There's no beneficial value. When you're working, it will be important.
Where do you cycle charge your battery?
Well, on a professional machine, there's an option to cycle charge your battery through the machine. Okay, there's also external chargers that you can buy, and the external charger what it has an option to go ahead and cycle charge the battery. Okay. Yeah. Well, you don't need to. No, because you'll shorten the life cycle of the battery. Is what you'll do.
Is it detrimental to leave the battery on the machine while it's also plugged in?
Well, no. I mean, the machine is designed to do that, but you know, batteries cost $80, or if you buy a recycled battery, it's going to cost you about $50. Okay, and you know, some people just like to try to maximize the product that they have, opposed to every year to year and a half changing out a battery. If you're using your machine and your battery every day, your battery may only last you about a year and a half or 2 years. But if you're working, that battery, and you're using the battery every day, that battery is very important to you. So, you know, if you're working if you were working and you're an official reporter, most likely you'd always be able to have an outlet that you're plugged into. The only time that you'd have to go on the battery is if you have to go to a sidebar, judge's chambers, or something like that. Yes, to save the life of the battery. Yeah, yeah. So, does anybody else have any other questions? Thank you. Yes, sir. Needs to be serviced.
So I don't write the paper, but I have to get serviced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm not here to sell service. I'm from Florida, so you're not going to send your machine. I mean, if you want to, you can, but the fact of the matter is that if you have a real noisy machine, there are pads in the machine that wear down over time, and as they wear down, you know, that means that it's time usually to get it serviced. Yes, ma'am.
Why is she bound to it? I was at the tripod, but I think there's a machine on the tripod.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What machine is it? Most likely, the tripod mount is not tight. Wasn't tightened when it was. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And most likely, that's all that would need to be done. Is that would need to be tightened. No, I don't recommend you taking the machines apart. So. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I hope you have a good day.